House podcast. I got a very special episode today. Usually we like to talk about construction or architecture and design. However, in this episode, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to talk about parenting and fatherhood. It's something that is important to me, given that I am a parent and a father, and what I do for a living really is just, it's not really who I am. It's what I do to generate an income and to provide for my family. But I would say what I am is a husband and a father. And that's what I'm most proud of. And part of the goal with this podcast, I started it a year ago, was to promote excellence in all things, not just excellence at your job or, excellence while you're in the gym or any other activity. It's holistic. It looks at your whole life. I don't think you can be excellent at work and then come home and not have the same attitude of excellence. So part of that, when I say excellence in all things, I'm talking spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, all the above. And part of that for me is being a good father, being a good role model. And that's something that I strive to be excellent at. And I fall short of that every day. But my guest with me right now is Wade Lombard.
Hey, man. I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. This is number 3.
I know.
Back by popular demand.
You'll just let anybody in here. It's really a low standard I'm finding.
No, not at all. And I do have to say, my daughter was very excited that she is your number one fan.
I need to meet these kiddos, and since we're talking about parenting, remind me if you don't mind, ages of your kids.
Yep.
Tell me, give me the snapshot.
Yeah. So my oldest, she's 5 and be 6 this year.
Wow.
My daughter, and then my son, he is 3, and he's a handful at times, as they both are. But such different personalities, and it's fun watching them grow up, and you realize that all of the tactics that you used on the first kid is completely out the window with the second. That's and you have to come up with a new game plan, and it's fun, but it's also challenging.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. I mean, you might have just said the most profound thing we'll hear all day, which is the way you parent one will be completely different than the way you parent another. One of the things I talk about a lot is I've got one that I'm constantly trying to push up the ladder. Buddy, you got this. Yeah. I'm so proud of you. You're going to get there because I need him to be more confident. And then my daughter, I'm like, get your butt off that ladder.
Yeah, right.
You think you're amazing. It's like in the same breath.
It's so different. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
It's wild. But so some of the things that I wanted to talk about today, you had sent me this article about basically parents having a desire to protect their kids, but sometimes protecting your children doesn't always mean you're protecting them. And we'll kind of go into that. Mm-hmm. And then some of the other things I wanted to discuss with you and get your thoughts on, who did God make your kids to be, and how can we as parents guide them towards those gifts and talents? And then I kind of want to go into discipline. And what does discipline mean, biblically speaking? What are we talking about? And raising the bar for your kids as parents. And, I have some examples of that I've experienced recently, not just with my own kids, but also observing other parents and their kids. And then what to do with kids maybe who lack discipline. But, before we get into this discussion, I found a nice quote by Mother Teresa. I'll read it. It says, "Peace and war begin at home. If we truly want peace in the world, let us begin by loving one another in our own families. If we want to spread joy, we need for every family to have joy." I thought that was a nice quote.
Certainly.
Mother Teresa has a lot of really good quotes about kids and parents and spreading joy. And
she has a knack for simplifying things that we complicate.
Well, let's get into this article. It's an article by Focus on the Family. It's called "Let Your Kids Fail."
Yeah, that's right.
What do you mean?
Well, it's interesting when I read the title of this years ago. So I'll give you a quick snapshot so everybody understands my specific situation with my children. Kimberly and I have been married 22 years as of this past Saturday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that means that we've been married longer than we've not been married. I got married when I was 21. We've been married 22 years. So we officially transitioned over to married longer in my life than not married. We got married again when I was 21. Kimberly was 22. She was robbing the cradle. And we waited 5 years to have children. But we had said we wanted to have them close together, Lord willing. And so we did. So my oldest was born, and then 15 months later, who is a boy, and then 15 months later, my youngest son was born, and then 18 months after that, our daughter was born. And so they're now a junior, sophomore, and freshman in high school. So they're back to back to back in grades. And I read this article, "People Should Let Their Kids Fail," essentially is the title. And I read that a few years ago and was really intrigued by it and thought maybe that was just clickbait and they just wanted me to open and they won. You know, I'm the guy that if it says what happens next will shock you, you better believe I'm clicking on it. You know? And so I click on this article and I start reading it. And it really partially confirmed what I already believed, but also affirmed, or actually gave me some new perspective on what I think parents are doing today. And we call them helicopter parents, and we call them all these things. But this was when our kids were very young, and we really started to bend to this idea. So what does it mean? So let's talk about that. It means that when your kid gets on the team of in Little League, and it's a team that's obviously going to absolutely be terrible, guess what? Your kid's going to be on a terrible team. Yeah, we're not going to save the day. When your child ends up in that elementary school with the teacher that most people complain about, I'm not going to step in and get them moved out of that classroom. You're going to have a year that might be a little harder. Even down, Lonnie, to the idea that, here recently, my son had a dentist appointment, and then he double booked something, and he was like, "I can't go." I said, "Well, you're figuring this out. Yeah. I'm not saving you. You call the dentist, you reschedule it, you make it open in your calendar. I'm not going to step in and fix this for you." Yeah. These ideas, which I believe were common 25, 30, 40 years ago, are becoming less common today. Yeah. We are trading future happiness for current happiness. And a kid that's full, what's the saying? Raise your kids and spoil your grandkids, or you're going to be spoiling your kids and raising your grandkids.
I've heard that. That's good.
This is all about a trade-off between the now and the future. And everything is front-loaded. I've started businesses. They're all front-loaded. They're all hard at the beginning. Yeah. Marriage is often very difficult at the beginning. Why? Because you don't know each other. You're trying to figure this out. Yeah. Almost all things that are important in our life are front-loaded. Your ability to allow your kid to fail, watch it, and it break your heart, is one of the most difficult things that you will do as a parent. It takes the most discipline because you have the resources, you have the time, you can make calls, you can fix the problem at any given time. Your ability to not do that, and you look your kid in the eye and say, "I love you so much, therefore I will not step in here and fix this for you." It will make your kid more independent, stronger, more resourceful. I love this word, resourceful. I want kids who, when they come up against adversity, they don't come running to me. They figure it out. And so these are the things that I'm trying to create. I'm going to give you an example.
Yeah, please do.
And so, and this is the kind of stuff that, my wife and I have interesting conversations about. A couple of years ago, my oldest his marching band from high school was in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Oh, okay.
Very cool. Well, the day after Thanksgiving, obviously the biggest shopping day of the year. So Kimberly and I leave the hotel with our daughter that morning. We're going to go shopping. our middle child stays in bed. He wants to sleep in. No worries. Have fun.
Yeah.
So we go out. We grab a Subway. We go down. Macy's, biggest department store. We're in there. Well, our middle child who slept in calls us and say, "Hey, I want to come find you guys. How are we going to do this?" And I said, "Come find us." I said, "You know you have it on our app. You know where we are. Come figure it out."
Yeah.
Kimberly, my wife, looks at me and says, "I'm sorry. What did you just say?" I said,
"Yeah,
he's 13 years old. We've taught him how to figure out the subway system. We've been here the last few days. Let's let him figure it out."
Yeah.
This whole idea, like, I've done some research. Things like kidnappings, they don't happen. The number of kidnappings have happened since like the beginning of our country by people that the person did not know, or like infinitesimal. It does not happen.
Yeah.
You know, these things are things that we created in our minds.
Yeah.
And the ability for a 13-year-old to say, "Hey, this is where we are. We'd love for you to be here. Come find us." And him to navigate his way down there. It was like 10 blocks away. Man, what a life skill.
Yep.
And I am of the belief that I do not want those muscles to atrophy. I want them to have strong muscles. So when they leave our house ready to take on the world. If that's going to be the product we're producing at the age of 18,
yeah, I
have to let them fail.
Yeah.
You got to figure it out. So anyway, the end of the story is this. We run into him. He's walking toward us. He's got a donut in one hand from Krispy Kreme. In the other hand, I don't remember, it was orange juice. He is having the time of his life.
Yeah.
He figured it out. Went and got breakfast. He's loving life. Didn't have a care in the world. And it was a great lesson for us that, like, hey, if something goes wrong, we can figure it out. But let's see where this goes. And he made it work.
We get so comfortable in this modern world, and you're right. Something like just being able to walk down the street, it's a no-brainer to anybody else. But do you think the problem that we have also nowadays is, like you mentioned, the kidnappings, with the news the way it is, it's all just right there. It's right in your face.
That's right.
And it's all bad news. It's never anything good because, nobody pays attention to that. And I think that just creates this atmosphere of fear.
That's right.
And we saw that during the pandemic. We saw that during, even with the eclipse that we just went through, right? They said, don't go to school, don't drive, don't go to work. There's going to be millions of people flooding to the city. It's going to be pandemonium. There's, things are going to fly off the shelf. There's not going to be any resources. Just stay home. And they shut down the schools. They stayed home. I was like, what is happening?
Ridiculous.
What is going on?
I was on the road that day, and I had no problem.
There were no traffic at all. Well, probably because everybody stayed home.
Right.
But it's so ridiculous.
It's unbelievably ridiculous, and it's all based in fear. If you go to the average person and say, "Hey, do you make fear-based decisions?" They'd be like, "No."
Right.
Like, no, yeah, you do. It is so important. Now, I personally am a person of faith. I believe in what the Bible says. The most repeated commandment in the Bible is fear not.
Yes.
So we are taught this. And so we teach our kids, we will not live in fear. We will not make decisions in fear. I'll also look for context clues in my life. I'm not looking to TV to tell me. Sure, there might be a war in Israel right now. There's probably some rough stuff going on over there. There might have been a kid kidnapped in, Montana yesterday. But in my world, right here, it's really safe.
Right.
It's really safe. And I've been living in this particular area for the last 16 years. And guess what? It's a really safe place. Why am I going to base my perspective based on somewhere else?
Right.
Around here, it's safe. I believe my kids are safe. I'm going to operate as if it's safe until I feel otherwise that it's not.
Yeah.
And so we really lean into that. We are so specific, very specific with our kids about fear. Fear is a killer. Fear is the thing that keeps you from asking that girl out. Fear is the thing that keeps you from the dance floor. Fear is the thing that keeps you from that job you want. Fear is the thing that keeps you from that school that you wanted to get into. Fear is the thing that keeps you from the things that you want in life.
Yeah.
Life's most amazing gifts are just on the other side of the thing you fear most.
Yeah.
This is a fundamental law that we teach our kids constantly, again, because I don't want fear to drive their decisions.
Yeah, and I think, going back to the article, what it's saying about allowing your kids to fail, it's sort of a controlled failure.
Of course.
It's not like, hey, you're going to crash and burn and this is going to be the end of your life kind of a failure.
Right.
So, but it kind of gets their feet wet, and I think it also teaches them, like, hey, this really isn't that bad.
That's right.
Yeah. So even if they do fail and they fail miserably, you're there as a parent to pick them up and say, well, let's assess this. What
did we learn?
What did we learn?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you're not going to go let your child go touch a hot pan.
Right.
Come on. That's what I was going to. But, for instance, I have 3 kids in high school. They're on teams. They're in camps. They're in bands. I'm not going to go talk to your coach. Mm-hmm. That's not my job. Here's the other thing. That's his full-time job. He knows more than I know.
Yeah.
These parents that go talk to coaches and band directors and all this stuff, guess what? This is all they think about all day long. Mm-hmm. They know more than I know. I do not want their job. Yeah. I'm so thankful for them. I have a very close friend, one of my best friends is a coach. The number of parents that come in and act like they know more. Hey, guess what? That's what he gets paid to do. I believe in him. I have confidence in him. I'm thankful he's a public educator. If you have a question about your playing time, you have a question about where you are in the lineup of this band, go talk to your coach, your teacher. Yeah. I'm not doing it because in 5 years you're going to have to do it anyway. Why would I do it now?
Exactly.
Simple thing. We've always made our kids order at restaurants. Mm-hmm. And so this is a very small way to get your kids to start working in this place of courage. Mm-hmm. So we would, as long as they could speak, if they were 4 or 5, the waiter would come up and they would ask us, and we would just look at our child. We'd already gone over it with them.
Yeah, right.
Well, why not go ahead and have them working that muscle of, this is what I would like to eat. Mm-hmm. And if you would like it different, you need to let them know that. These are the types of things we've been doing for a really long time. And I think if you met all 3 of my kids, one of the things that you would find consistent about them is they look adults in the eye. They speak clearly. If there's something that they feel like they need or want, they're not afraid to kind of bring that up respectfully.
That's great. And I think my parents did the same thing where, you can order for yourself. And it definitely teaches you that, just because you're a child or you're younger or you're not in a position of authority, you can still speak up. You can still say something.
Use your words.
Exactly.
That's it. Yeah.
But this whole method of, allowing your kids to fail, my kids are younger, so they're not. What are, in your mind, I guess, some good examples for kids that are that young to sort of practice this principle, of experiencing, like, going out and being allowed to fail? I mean, it's kind of hard when they're 3 and 5.
It is. Let me talk about something that I felt was a way to give my kids responsibility, and then maybe that will answer your question. Okay. One of the best things I think we did was we had B&B at our house when our kids were your kids' age.
Yes.
They were 3, 4, and 5. I think your kids were 3 and 5, right?
Yep.
All the way up until now. Let's think of B&B. It's bed and basket. That means every day you make your bed and you put away everything in your basket. Let's talk about this basket. This is really important.
Okay.
They were all 3 different colors, so you knew exactly what your basket was. We did not put away their toys. We put everything in a basket. Their clothes that were folded, we put them in a basket. Anything we wanted them to do, we put in the basket. Even if the toy was right by where the toy went, we would put it in the basket. And then every day they had to empty their basket. This place of encouragement. I did not get the toy out. It would be just as easy, by the way, for me to put it where it goes. This idea of, no, I'm going to have my kid, everything in the basket. If it's closed, you got to put them in your drawer. I don't do that. I don't make your bed. Hey, you got this toy out. This is where it goes. This builds that muscle of responsibility. And when they it was very obvious when they failed because the had something in the basket.
Yeah.
And we would say, hey, this is our family value system. This is where we are. This is what we need you to do. Those kinds of things are really important. Is encouraging them to have division of labor within the house, not doing it for them. Again, this whole idea of stepping in and doing things for your kids, not doing it for them, even when it's easier to do it for them. And so, and a lot of it, let me tell you where it's really hard, is conflict with friendships. It's when they're your kid's age. Your desire to step in and fix a problem instead of allowing your kid to fix it themselves, where they get in a fight with a neighbor or a friend, maybe it's physical even. Your desire when someone puts your hands on your kid, pretty strong.
I can imagine. Yeah.
We all feel that.
Yeah. Your
ability to take your kid aside and say, hey, how are you going to handle this? Even at 5 years old, what was your plan? And they're looking at you to handle it. Say, I think you probably need to go talk to this neighbor. You need to try to figure out what happened. What went down? Why were they upset? Teaching them to handle it, even if they're going to get physical. They need to handle it. Wade, this person punched my kid. Look, there are obviously limits to everything. You don't want your kid's arm getting ripped off by the neighbor.
Yeah.
But again, when it comes to conflict from other people, the desire for us to step in and fix it is so strong. The discipline to pull your child aside and say, hey, let's break this down. Let's see what happened. What do you think we should do? This is a really hard concept for adults. It's a really hard concept for me to sit down and say, hey, Lonnie, listen, man, the other day you said something to me. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way the mood I was in, indigestion. But man, it hurt.
Yeah.
Can you help unpack that a little bit for me? Why did you say that? That's a hard thing for adults to do.
It is.
To be able to teach a child at the age of 5, 6, 10, 15, 18 to have those conversations, they immediately have a leg up on relational currency for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
It's incredible. They will have better jobs as a result. They'll lead people better. They'll have better marriages. They'll raise their kids better. From just not stepping in and fixing the problem yourself, but instead teaching your kid how to fix it.
Yeah, and that's honestly, that's something that I struggle with. I try to implement what you're saying, and I'm just speaking personally here. I let my kids, how do I say? I give them, if they want to do something, I'll give them or show them the resources that I have. And then I say, okay, well, now you do it.
Imitation.
And I like the whole bed and basket. As far as the conflict resolution, something that we're actually going through currently is, conflicts between siblings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So much.
And so they're little, and which we can also get into as far as, the role, I guess, of the parent at different age groups. But right now, I think, my daughter is getting to the point where she can handle a little bit deeper conversation. Let's talk through it a little bit. And the little one, not so much. It's very
pretty young,
reactionary, and so an instance that we had just this week was, my son took something from my daughter, and she got mad and hit him and hurt him, and it was kind of a big deal because he could have been hurt a lot more than he was, but we really made a big deal out of it because we want to try to stop that behavior, before it really has a foothold. So, but yeah, it was one of those things that's like, what do I do? Like, how do I navigate this? What am I gonna say? And this was right as I got home, and I come in the door, and the house is just dead quiet, and I'm like, is everybody dead? Like, what's going on in here? And so I knew something was up, and it's like, well, your daughter's in her room. You need to go talk to her. I was like, okay, so, and it's hard, and how do you go through that conflict resolution? What
did you have siblings?
I did. I have an older brother.
How much older?
3 years.
Okay. Did you guys fight? Argue?
Yes.
Conflict?
Yeah.
How did you guys settle it as you were young?
Some of it was physical. I would say, I mean, we're really close now, and we always have been. It was very rare when we did fight.
Okay.
It was very rare. But if we did have a disagreement,
is one more docile, one more aggressive?
You're asking some very probing questions. I'm trying. Let's see. I'm probably the more docile one, I would say. I think it's something that if we did resolve it, we would talk through it later.
Yeah.
You know.
Here's my thoughts.
Okay.
Here's why I'm asking these questions. Okay. It goes back to our original comments about they're all different, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of things I wanted to tease out of you as you were talking about you and your brother. First of all, there was conflict. We're really close now. So keeping in mind that is 99.9% of the time, hey, we had a lot of conflict growing up. We are so close now. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, that's the result of sibling relationships. So there's a part of me that wants to say the conflict that you're having between your daughter and your son, man, it's so normal. Yeah. It's so natural. And there's going to be a day when they're best friends. For whatever reason, that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Okay, that's first. Second of all, I want to pull my kids back towards balance. Mm-hmm. Okay? So my oldest was always very aggressive, almost to the point of anger. Matter of fact, Dobson, who's started Focus on the Family, the article you're pulling for, Dr. James Dobson, wrote a book called The Strong-Willed Child.
Yeah.
My wife and I read it after we had our first.
Yeah.
I mean, he's wired that way.
Yeah.
My middle child is the sweetest human being on the planet. These are brothers that are 15 months apart. They could not be more different. My goal as a parent is to pull both of them towards balance. Okay? Jack's my oldest. Hey, this is not okay. You're too angry, too aggressive. I need you to come back down. So here's kind of the methodology we want you to do to come back down.
Yeah.
Lawson, my middle child. Hey, you got to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
You're being too passive. When your brother does that, I want you to do these things. My goal as a parent is to make sure they're balanced.
Yeah.
So if I have one that's too passive, if I have one that's too turn the other cheek, I need to be pumping him up and saying, look, buddy, you got to stand up for yourself. That's not okay. And if I have one that's too much this way, I've got to get him down here towards balance as well.
Yeah.
So much of the sibling thing is, it's natural. They're going to be close in the future. But right here, right now, how do I bring these kids towards balance?
That's good. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Because that's something that I didn't know if that was the correct way to go about handling it. Because you're right. I mean, my daughter is definitely more energetic. She's more aggressive, and my son is not. He's very sweet, and he's a tender kid. Mm-hmm. And so some of it, it's like, well, do I need to encourage him to fight back a little? It's like, do I want to be encouraging that? And I don't know. I just always have those questions, those thoughts. Like, was that the right way to handle it?
Well, the idea though is that, again, if he's a doormat now, he's going to be a doormat when he gets married. He's going to be a doormat when he starts playing sports. Yeah. And so this idea that there's a happy balance here that is a well balanced young person that understands that this is too angry and this is too docile. And we live here. And our goal has got to be around, how do I see my child for what they are, what their struggle is, what their extremes are, and pull them back towards the middle. Mm-hmm. And all the kids are going to be in different areas. I'll give you another example. My youngest, my daughter, extremely organized. Never had to tell her to make her bed, never had to tell her to hang her clothes up. Everything is always perfect. Well, let me tell you what happens with somebody like that. When something doesn't go her way, she has these expectations. Hey, we're leaving at 8 a.m. If it's 8:05 and we haven't left, the wheels start coming off the bus because she's so strict. Yeah. And so for her, I have to say, hey, relax. It's okay. We're okay. It's only 5 minutes. even though she's wired more like me, because I'm more like that. Well, my son, my middle child, I have to say, now put on your right shoe. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And so he's in La La Land, and he's happy to be there. I want to go to where he lives. So I say, hey, buddy, we said we were leaving at 8, and you're not even close to ready, and it's 7:58. What is your plan to get ready in 2 minutes? So one, I'm trying to get calmed down from being so strict, so militant, so boundary driven. The other one, I'm trying to create guardrails for him, and I'm trying to do this literally at the same time.
Right.
That is parenting.
Gosh, that's great. That's a great way to sum it up. Yeah. Well, let's kind of dive into. I kind of want to define some terms, but let's kind of talk about discipline, and what that means biblically speaking, and as fathers and as parents, how do we discipline our kids to become the person that God has intended them to be? So, discipline to me is I think a lot of people hear the word discipline and they think spanking or
they also think punitive.
Yeah. Anything in that nature.
Right.
But discipline really is, I think, it's a lifestyle. It's not necessarily an action. It's a way of behaving. And so discipline, the Bible talks about a lot. So Proverbs is just full of. Every verse is just a little snippet of wisdom that is amazing. Everything. But Proverbs 19:18, discipline your son, for in that there is hope. Do not be a willing party to his death. Colossians 3:21, fathers, do not embitter your children or they will become discouraged. So to me, there's kind of this, you're disciplining your kids and making sure that they're staying on the right path, but you're also being encouraging. You're not wanting to be so harsh and come down on them so hard that they become discouraged or hopeless. And so to me, that's what I mean, and discipline it's a lifestyle. It's, I think you yourself also have to be disciplined and teach your kids through example.
I have lots of thoughts here. Let me start by saying that I think this is an area where I failed. That's not fair. I think this is an area where I could have done significantly better.
Okay.
I am by nature a disciplined person, and I'm also a disciplinarian. My definition of leadership is to set clear expectations and hold people accountable.
Yeah.
And
which is, that's mine as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's, I truly believe that. I think in the area of children, I was determined I will not lose. I will win. And I had that posture too often, and I lacked a softness that I now have. But I think there were some rough years in the early days. Yeah. So because I'm a disciplined person, because I can also be kind of militant in my schedule and what my expectations are about having a tidy house and these kinds of things, when things are not in the right place, when I feel like things are out of control, I can struggle. And it used to be pretty bad when you have 3 toddlers.
I do. I struggle with it.
So I just want to start by saying this is an area I could have been better at. Let me give an example. My oldest, strong-willed child, stubborn as a mule. I would raise my voice, and I would go through the typical discipline behavior to get him to do what I wanted him to do. If I did those things with my other 2 children, immediately, boom. Whatever I needed, they did. Yeah. My oldest would dig his heels in the ground, and he would become more obstinate. Yeah. That method did not appeal to him. That method did not. You think, well, it shouldn't appeal to him. Well, what gets the result? What makes him more disciplined? What gets his attention? That does matter. And as a parent, I should have been more observant and aware of, hey, this is not working well, and I need to adjust my style to get the result I want, which is a child that understands that the behavior he just did was unacceptable. It worked with 2. It did not work with that one. Mm-hmm. We spent years in battles off and on the daily mm-hmm. that weren't necessary.
Yeah.
And so on the heels of that, I want to say this. Moses comes down off the mountain with 10 commandments. One of those is respect your mother and father. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the other part of me says this, and I had a mentor once tell me that he would tell his kids this. He said, look, and he was such a loving guy. Man, this guy had a heart of gold, but he would tell, he had 3 boys, and he would say, listen, you do not have to love me, even though I want you to. Yeah. You don't even have to like me, but you will respect me. Mm-hmm. There is something around that too, of there is a family value system here, and you respecting your parents is one of those family value systems. And it will be important, not now, it will be important forever. And so balancing all that when it comes to discipline has been something that I've had to learn. And so much of this parenting stuff, I think, comes natural to us, and because we love our children, and that deep affection just creates good parenting.
Yeah.
There are areas that we have to really work on, and a skill set has to be developed. And this is one of those areas where I needed a softness, and I've developed a softness that I wish I had when my kids are younger.
Gosh, just everything you said, it brings back things that either I've been through or currently going through, and so I'm just trying to process it all. But yeah, where do you really draw the line? If you're trying to get something done, right, or you're trying to get your child to do something, and they're digging in their heels, and then if you don't push or fight back, I've heard a lot of people say, well, then you're giving in. The child won.
Yeah.
Right. What do you do?
Absolutely. So there has to be a level of they have a desire to do something, and because they're not behaving well, you're taking that thing away. And maybe it's a toy, maybe it's a device, an iPad, maybe it's time with their friends, maybe as an adult, or a young adult. Let's say they're 16. What do you do with a 16-year-old? Mm-hmm. Well, I bought your car, so I'm going to take your keys.
Yeah.
The house is mine. You know what? I'm going to take your door off the hinges of your room.
I remember that happening.
Yeah. There are things that you can do. There has to be a way to get their attention. Here's where I wish I would have been different, and I'm now different. I try not hard to match my kids in emotional output. Right. So if they start screaming, I stay just like I am right now. Mm-hmm. Hey, excuse me, that's unacceptable behavior. We're not going to do this. Let me tell you where we're headed. We're headed to, I'm going to take your car away. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm going to take your phone away, and I'm going to probably take it away for a week. I just want to make sure you know that before we keep heading down this road. So there has to be removal of something, mm-hmm. and you just happen to have all the leverage. Okay. The problem happens when you don't follow through. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, when you and your spouse are not on the same page on what these ramifications are.
That's killer.
If when I go to work, you give that device back to that child, we have a problem. Mm-hmm. So Kimberly and I, this is somewhere where we were, I think, really consistent. We were aligned. And so she would back me up and I would back her up.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is that we would follow through on whatever it was. My son, 10 days after getting his license, he got in an accident. I said, son, I'm not paying for this. Mm-hmm. You're going to share in the cost of this. And then, sure enough, now he's working at HEB, paying off the $1,500 that he owes the situation. Again, I'm not going to save you. Here's the discipline for, and if you knew the story, I'm not going to get into it, but it was very avoidable, okay?
Sure, yeah.
And so the discipline around this, the way he's going to learn is he's going to have to work, and it's taken him about 6 months, HEB, being a cashier, to pay this thing off. Okay, we have to stick to it. By the way, this was 3 or 4 months ago that the incident happened. Mm-hmm. I'm not letting him off the hook.
Yeah,
seeing it through. So some of those things have to be part of it, I think. in order to get their attention. And so I know all those things seem really basic for listeners. You know, it feels like, okay, well, there's nothing special about it. The special part is you identified what would matter to them that gets taken away. The second thing is you stick with it. You do not give in. Third, you're aligned with your significant other. There's no, if she likes it, I love it.
Yeah.
You know, this is where we are.
Yeah.
All of this creates stability for children, and they understand that guardrails are real, and that mom and dad are together on this thing. I'm not gonna get my way, you know, go into one or the other.
Yeah. Well, how do we go about identifying what gifts and talents that our kids have, and how do we steer them in the right direction to become the kids that, or become eventually the adults that God intended them to be?
Oh man, I love this stuff.
Yeah.
This is, you know, Alani, at this point, I love to find out what makes people tick.
Yes.
I love finding out what matters to people.
So what have you done?
So let me say this. The first thing I think that Kimberly and I have done a great job is we've not tried to create small Kimberlys and small Wades.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I learned a long time ago that my oldest, he can hear a song and he'll know what note it's in. He'll remember all the lyrics. I can't remember what I have for breakfast, you know, but this kid, he's just wired different.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not an academic. I grew up with dyslexia. I had all these issues in the classroom. My oldest just took the SATs, didn't crack a book, and got in the 90th percentile.
Wow.
He's wired different, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but that's easier said than done for parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now he's 17. By now you're okay with it, but when you're trying to get him to kick a soccer ball when he's 4 or 5, you're frustrated.
Yeah. But
then you start paying attention to the things that he gravitates to. You know, he really loved electronics. So, you know, I got all one Christmas, because I knew that this was something he was about. I got all the parts to build a computer.
Wow.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, make a list. And I got all these different parts. And we could have gone to buy a computer in one piece. We went to Fry's. We went online. We built, you know, we had all these pieces. And for Christmas, I sat there and watched him build this computer. I don't know anything about it. Then he taught himself how to code.
Wow.
All of these things, we really tried to say, hey, buddy, you're doing great. Keep going. Even though we had no idea what he was doing. Yeah. You know, he could be building a bomb for all I know.
Right.
But he wasn't. But again, trying to foster those things, it's so obvious when brought to a fork in the road, he's taking that left or that right towards this thing and then encouraging that thing. Here's something that's important as parents. He's musically gifted, but he, for a while, especially in middle school, like most middle schoolers, he was socially awkward. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted to quit band. Okay. So as a parent, I had up to that point allowed him to stop playing sports because he didn't like sports. But I knew he was musically gifted. And I knew this is an area where God had given him an incredible gift. And so at this point, why would I let him quit soccer, quit baseball, but not quit band? Because as a parent, I'm paying attention. Yeah. And I'm like, this kid's gifted at this. And the things that God's put in us to do with excellence, we need to be doing those things. And so I said, son, you're not quitting. I understand what the situation is. I know it makes you uncomfortable. We'll work through it together, but you're not quitting. He was bawling, crying on multiple occasions. Your mom and I feel like this is an area you're gifted in. And now he's killing it in band. He's one of the leaders. He's doing great. But it took us paying attention to say, hey, what are you great at? What do you love? Let's figure what that out, even though we don't understand it, and let's make sure we're fostering that stuff. And so if you're a person of faith, I think God is going to give you the discernment to know the thing that your kid is gifted to do. Mm-hmm. My middle child, I believe he'll probably be a football coach or a pastor. He is such a gifted and articulate communicator. And here's the deal. He's not wired like me. Even though it drives me crazy, he forgets things. He's all over the place. He procrastinates. Lord, help me. He procrastinates. God made him that way. Yeah. And so still creating guardrails. hey, even if you procrastinate, this is the deadline. I'm going to hold you accountable to that. But allowing him to work within that his world of how God made him, but saying, hey, with football and all these sports things that he does and all the things at church that he loves, giving him the space to do that. And same with my daughter with cheer and all these things. As parents, we have to pay attention, make sure we're not trying to create mini-me's. Also pay attention to what the gifts that God's given them to do, not let them quit those things, encourage those things. And when we don't know exactly, we're not into the same thing they're into.
Yeah.
If you like it, I love it.
Awesome, Wade. And my goal with this episode was, obviously this is something that I'm currently struggling with, and I'll be open and honest about that. There are things that I honestly just don't know how to respond, or and I'm hoping that I do the right thing and say the right thing and react the right way. And I'm very self-analytical, and which I think a lot of people are. But Wade, you're somebody whose opinion I respect and admire a lot, and I think that our values are aligned. And so I hope my goal with this episode was to not only kind of flesh out some things that I'm going through and get your thoughts just as a mentor, but also put those things out here for everybody to hear and listen to, because a lot of people are probably going through the same exact things, and they might need to hear it. So I appreciate your wisdom and your knowledge, and I thank you for sharing it with me. Is there anything you want to?
Yeah, I was just gonna. If you're a person of faith, and you and I both are, I wanted to read a blessing that we vocalize verbally over our children, and both my sisters do it. My mom did it, and this has become such a mantra for our family. And as I think about parenting, it's hard for me not to think of this. And this is how it goes. You will love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. You are the head and not the tail. You are the top and not the bottom. You are above and not beneath. You are the lender and not the borrower. You are blessed and highly favored. You are blessed with every spiritual blessing. You are blessed going in. You are blessed going out. You are growing in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and with man. You tell your kids this before they get out of the car in the morning, they go into school, and you tell this to them before they go to bed at night. They will start to believe with all their heart that they're growing in favor with God and with man, and that they have wisdom, and that they are the lender and not the borrower, and that they are blessed going in and blessed going out. We have so much control over what our children ingest. I will say the world wants to fill them up with fear, with things that are not true, things that say that they're ugly, they're overweight, they're not enough. Our ability as parents to tell them that is exactly the opposite of what we believe as parents and what God believes about you. And the world doesn't define you. God does. These words are special. And your kids, if it's repeated to them over and over, they will start to believe it as well, and it'll change their life.
Perfect way to end. Very well said. I hope this reaches a lot of people, and I hope everybody can get something from it. So, Wade, I appreciate your time.
Anytime. Love it.